Well, forget the corruption charges against Democratic Senator Bob Menendez. Is the real story the Medicare fraud that was just exposed by this scandal? John, let me just explain. Senator Menendez was accused or is accused of covering up for a doctor friend of his. There's his doctor friend, Mel, who apparently overbilled Medicare $9 million. And this is going on all over the place with Medicare.
Well, I think the overcharging is a symptom of a bigger problem. Government, by definition, is fraudulent and incompetent, not because they're bad people, but because they're not driven by pure market signals. The founders understood that. They wanted local governments so that mistakes would be confined in their error. With this, we have national programs. It's no surprise that the errors are really large.
And, Bruce, we don't want to minimize what Senator Menendez is charged with. That's a serious charge in itself. But look at the Medicare. The numbers on Medicare fraud are just extraordinary. $60 billion in 2014 alone in improper Medicare payments.
Yeah, and I think that this calls to attention. I really look forward to this going to a trial so people can take a look at how the system that is based on fee-for-service medicine, where doctors and hospitals can essentially charge whatever they want without any checks and balance and quality measures, is moving in part because of the Affordable Care Act and also because of moves in the private sector to a value-based system
but it's
where it's based
worse.
on quality measures. It's going to get better.
Steve, the more government is involved, the worse the situation goes. You can see the numbers.
Yeah, first of all, you have the politicians. They don't want to hear complaints from constituents about not getting Medicare. And so that's why the Medicare's philosophy is go ahead with it, then they'll try to find the fraud later instead of preventing it in advance, as private insurers try to do. The other thing is, if you really want to fight corruption, bring real free markets into Medicare, give people medical savings accounts, say $10,000 a year, better coverage on catastrophic coverage. When they control that $10,000 or $15,000 a year, they'll make sure they get value for their money.
Well, there's an answer. But, Rich, it begs the question, isn't the system right now designed for fraud?
Yeah, it is designed for fraud, and people being imperfect creatures will take advantage of it like the doctor in Florida did. Look, I once paid more than $10,000 for an MRI that should have cost about between $500 and $1,000, and that's the lard that gets put into the system for a whole variety of reasons, from fraud to legal covering your behind.
And we now know about this relationship between Menendez and his doctor friend. We don't have proof that what the government charges is true, but I'm wondering how many other politicians have relationships with doctors covering up their overbilling.
Well, I'm sure they'll pop up, David, and I think the scariest part of all of this is if you look at the unfunded liabilities, which is essentially all the money we're on the hook for in future years, billions of dollars that our children and grandchildren are going to have to kick into this fraudulent system. That's why it has to be privatized.
Sabrina, is this just the tip of the iceberg that we're going to get into with Obamacare?
Oh, absolutely. See, I'm with John on this. I think that this is a problem of a ballooning progressive state that fosters a culture of corruption. And Medicare is just one example, and Obamacare is going to take it to a whole nother level. The fact is, government has been in the business of health care for 40 years now. They have distorted the market. They have ensured that money runs through many different hands, that there's no transparency, that people have no sense of what services and procedures actually cost them, and it enables this kind of fraud. And we're going to see much more of that with Obamacare.
All right. Well, specifically, Bruce, how you say that Obamacare has these things in it that are meant to prevent fraud. Name them out. Spell them out specifically.
Okay, so first of all, we're handing off benefit administration to private insurance companies, which is what Mr. Forbes wants and what a lot of people want. And so they also have predictive modeling. And so Medicare Advantage program, Medicare is managed by private companies. They can examine this. They can see the claims. They can track the claims. They know which doctors are billing more for certain things.
John?
So it is going to change.
What's wrong with that?
Well, what's wrong with it is Steve points out all the time that with computers, television, cell phones, market competition always prices down. I don't see the difference with medical costs, but government is involved, so the prices keep going up. They will, by definition, go up based on what Bruce wants.
And, Steve, doesn't it work best when the patient is in charge of his own billing? I mean, isn't the person ultimately paying the bill the best one to sort of make sure costs are kept down?
Absolutely. You see medical care all the time. Take LASIK surgery for the eyes. Costs far less than it did 10 or 12 years ago because you don't have a disconnect between providers and consumers. with third parties. Markets work always turn scarcity into abundance if you let them.
Well, Steve has answers, but you know where those answers are all kept in one book? Popular Economics is the name of John Tamny's brand new book. It is a terrific compendium of a lot of the problems that we have in this country. And believe it or not, every one of those problems has a relatively simple market solution to them. It's a very optimistic book. If you want to feel good about the future, you got to read this book by John Tamny. Congrats, John. Great book. All right, well, the Cash It In gang getting ready to roll at the bottom of the hour. Eric, what do you have?
Hey, David, preventing deadly police shootings. Would paying to put body cams on all cops help protect everyone? And critical of Christians, but not of radical Muslims. What our president just said about the religion of most Americans that some say could be making the war on terrorism more costly. See you at the bottom of the hour.
We will be watching. Thank you, Eric. But up here first, is it fair for senators to get away with lying about something that ordinary folks like you and me could be sued for?